So I thought we're gonna open it up with Elouan. So we just had like a previous episode, and we talked about like the beginning and with the Mayomi sale, and that was a great story. Definitely think you should check that out if you haven't. But it also started out with like the beginning wines that you had after that sale of your portfolio, right? And one of those was Elouan.
Yeah.
Yes. And so like, and this was kind of like a first for you, right? Doing fruit from another state. I mean, you're bringing in fruit from Oregon.
I'd done some work in Argentina, but like that's very different.
Oh yeah.
Because that's Southern Hemisphere, right? So the seasons are upside down.
Yeah.
So like in our winter, you're going down there for harvest. So it was pretty cool, but nonetheless, that was a very different process too. But very different varietal, all that stuff, and then getting grapes shipped up in a frozen state. It's like a long story. We can talk about that someday. So with Elouan, number one, I learned that transportation, it's not that hard to manage. Early on in my career, it was, and I don't mean like just logistics and stuff. I just mean like, how long can grapes last? What do you need to do to make sure they're fresh when they arrive at the winery if they're going through a 6 or 10 hour haul, right? Because you're picking all throughout the coast, from as far south as Santa Barbara for us, as far north as Willamette Valley. And so we kind of, this is where some of the stuff like cryo extraction began to go towards the front end of the process, meaning like at picking. So, okay, well, dry ice, CO2 in its solid form. Let's go ahead and layer that in with our picks in long transits. And so that'll cool it down, and it'll protect it from, having a lot of oxygen, which doesn't really make much of a difference anyways. But it'll cool it down and keep it fresh until we receive it at the winery.
Yeah.
So that kind of opened the door for us with like all of these different areas to go ahead and make wine from. Now, Elouan was intended to be kind of the California Pinot Noir maker, my rendition of what I think Oregon Pinot Noir could be. Because what I saw was that Oregon, in general, all the producers were trying to emulate Burgundy. Everything they talked about was like so similar to Burgundy. It's so like the way we produce this is just like what Burgundy does. And I was like, you're not Burgundy. Like, it's a totally different area. Yeah, you might have some similarities, but it's not Burgundy. Different soils, different climate, just totally different conditions. So I thought, okay, I'll go up there and I'll take my philosophy, this copper cane philosophy, and everything that comes along with it, and apply it to Oregon Pinot Noir. And our first experimental vintage was 2012. Wines turned out good. We ended up not bottling them, though. We started with our first release was a 2013 vintage, but 12 really set us on a path where it was like, Willamette's good, but let's experiment with some of these other regions south of Willamette that are all in the coastal foothills. So Umpqua Valley, Rogue Valley, and see what we can come up with for like an amazing everyday Oregonian-style Pinot Noir, in my interpretation. And so that's kind of where it all started. And one thing we saw as a big difference was Elouan means good light, and in an old dialect of Breton. It's a story about the difference in how the grapes ripen. So in California, we have shorter days during summer months than Oregon does. And so there's a profound difference on the ripening process of the grapes to create the eventual wine that we're making, which is what differentiates stylistically between, say, a coastal California Pinot and a coastal Oregon Pinot. So good light is the amount of light and the cooler temperatures, because the berries are much plumper. They go, ripening is pretty much all through photosynthesis, whereas here in California, we have a little bit of dehydration as the summer months roll on. It gets hot and dry and all that. So the wines are very unique, and so I wanted a name that would be befitting of it. So that's where Elouan came from. And it was a great way for us to, kind of showcase what I think the new style of Oregon is or could be. And what we've seen since this is a big departure from that traditionalism of trying to emulate Burgundy. And it's, by and large, Californian winemakers who can't afford land here in California, don't want to deal with the regulations, and they're not funded enough to be able to start a winery here.
Yeah.
So they move up to Oregon, buy a small plot, they build a small winery, and begin their own career as an independent producer. So it's like, if I'm a winemaker hired by one of the big companies and I'm saving up, and I'm like, man, I'd really like to have my own winery someday, but I just can't make ends meet here in California, Oregon's a great opportunity. And so you're seeing these people, both men and women, go up there and take a different philosophy to grape growing and winemaking in Oregon that's more similar to what they've done here in California, which is really, I think, progressing the growth of the Oregon Pinot Noir industry. So that's cool. I'm glad to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So Elouan, well, you see here, so this is one thing that it's kind of coming a little early. We haven't launched this yet. We're just about to, probably in the next month or so.
Oh, yeah, the
new pack, because I loved this old Elouan pack. I mean, it was kind of like Art Deco. I've always loved Art Deco architecture. So designed this to try to, be simple but very pleasant and have a unique shape that would kind of pop off the shelf amongst the plethora of normal, square brands out there. But it didn't tell the story of what Elouan means, which is good light. And so started designing and wanted to showcase the coastal foothills of Oregon, which is this kind of like bronze line here, and then putting rays of light coming out from behind that sun. And I think that overall it turned into such an elegant package, something that still does, really pop off the shelf. People are curious about it. We screen printed all these rays on, so it's a very kind of like, it differentiates itself on the shelf and on the table very much. But more importantly, it tells the story. So transitioning over to that kind of right now as we speak, should be out in the next month or so, but man, really a fun project.
And that's cool because you get like a sneak peek at this podcast of the new packaging. I think another thing that's unique about that is, and I might have some footage that I could actually might be able to add in, where I was like coming in, and I think you were working on some spirits projects, but there was also, I got a glimpse of you working on this project before you even released it. And this is another cool thing I've always mentioned is you're very hands-on with the packaging, and you have like your room that we call the dungeon. Yeah. And it's like this fucking dark room with like a red velvet couch.
Yep.
Did you say that like your grandma gave that to you?
My grandma gave me the couch.
That's your story?
I got it reupholstered.
Yeah, I bet you did.
It was like throw up green. It was not a good looking couch.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't originally red.
No.
Throw up green.
No, it was, but dude, I'm not getting that couch.
Yeah.
Was when she gave it to me, she still had the vinyl coverings on it.
Oh, the 50s.
50s, 60s, yeah.
Thing, right? Yeah.
And so I got it reupholstered to red velvet. Because like the woodwork on it was beautiful. And
it's
so
nice.
I didn't have a place to put it, and I wanted it somewhere safe. So I put it in the packaging dungeon.
Yeah, and it's cool, but this is like your place, and I remember seeing this bottle, and like you were just doing it, you were using, I don't even know if it was whiteout or like pen.
I was using a white paint pen.
White paint pen,
yeah.
And you were like drawing this all out, and then it's like cool to see it come to fruition and see what it like turns into, but also just I think it's kind of neat to know that you're like, how involved you are into those projects. And also I just want to say like, because this is interesting, and we can get back into the Elouan story is great, but just on a packaging note too, is when you do a change like this, what can sometimes, I think it is interesting to know like what sometimes can spawn that, because I feel like now we're getting, you already explained that this is like expressing more of what Elouan means.
Yeah.
But I also think that Elouan got a little sexy. Elouan kind of like...
Oh, like this sexed it up a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I've been seeing some more of maybe some of the new kind of... yeah, like look at the rosé, but I also been seeing maybe some of the new things that are going to be coming out expressing Elouan's sexuality. If you know what I'm saying, I'm not trying to give too much away because I got the inside at the sales meeting, but you got
the inside. Yeah, so it is a depiction of what good light can look like on the not just wine but also human form.
Thank you. Oh yeah.
Okay, so
that's that. God, you're so good.
So that's kind of the theme of this, and the package is sexy. It's actually a little sultry, I think. Like that just kind of stark black, white, bronze kind of play, and conveying the good light. But yeah, the material that's going to come along with it, which you'll probably see on social media and ads and whatever else, it looks good. I like it.
It looks really good. I just want to say it's sexy. It's giving me like this nice kind of sexual Adam and Eve, like coming from the woods, like nature, like the way it should have been. Like where's that forbidden fruit? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's religion. That's just me.
Elouan is the forbidden fruit.
Is. Oh. Ooh,
Garden of Eden.
Oh yeah, we're getting it. So I also think it's interesting to know that. So this operation of what was it like going into Oregon, being like a Cali kid? Did you get any stuff like that? Like what I mean?
From producers,
where people like, what's up?
From producers, yes.
Yeah.
But I wasn't dealing with producers.
Yeah.
So like all the other winemakers up there, wineries up there, there's a funny thing up in Oregon where it's like even if you're a transplant, like you came from California and moved up there.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the producers are like, they immediately become Oregon. And like, what the fuck are you doing up here? And you're like, dude, you moved here like 3 years ago from California. And they're like, yeah, well, I'm Oregonian now. Okay. So you just got like you got a feather in your hat? Now you're like holier than thou?
Yeah.
Anyways, it is kind of funny. You do get that vibe from both the old and the new school up there on the producer side. But the grower side, they're awesome. And that's like who we generally deal with.
Oh, yeah.
Is people that are in the actual agricultural part of it. And so they're like, yeah, just like they love it. They think it's, us bringing Oregon to, a broader market, bringing it, up a level, I think, and showcasing, broader than just Willamette Valley. That's the other thing about Oregon that's interesting is that they have some groups up there that are paid for by the growers and producers. So it's almost like a tax, but you have to pay into this fund that goes to promoting Oregon wines throughout the nation and the world.
Yeah.
The problem is that is controlled by people in the Willamette Valley, and so you don't have any marketing dollars going anywhere for the guys in the South, and so those guys, when they say like, oh, you want to talk about Umpqua and Rogue Valley,
yeah,
just on the same level as Willamette, I'm like, yeah, there's no reason for these areas to not be showcased to the same level as Willamette.
Yeah,
they've just over-marketed the hell out of Willamette. Now Willamette's still great, but Rogue Valley is like, I would say the best wines are coming out of Rogue, personally, Pinot Noir wise.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all like ecstatic about it. Willamette, same thing. Growers are all in big support of us. And it's funny being on we're on the saddle of it. So we're involved up there from the grape and vine side, but we make all of our wines here in California because I have this, one team, one dream. And I'm not in the business of creating these estates everywhere. Like I'm not a proprietor, right? I want to be a winemaker and a grape grower. And so if I started setting up shop and we're going to have a Oregon winery with a tasting room, whatever else, we're going to have a Sonoma winery with a tasting room focusing on whatever, one in Monterey. Like if we started doing that, then all of a sudden I'm a proprietor.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell I can be involved in making all those wines.
Exactly.
Nor could the core team that we have in making wines. And these are the guys and girls that I trust with my life and them knowing if I got to go on a trip somewhere, like a sales trip, they've got it done.
They're your ride or die.
Yeah. I don't need to worry about them at all. They're we got a phenomenal team. So you can only achieve that kind of quality and consistency, in my opinion, if it's under one roof.
Yeah.
And so that's where part of our philosophy differentiates, I think, from a lot of people, where most people think of it like, why would you want to, don't you lose the sense of place? It's like, no, the grapes are still carrying that sense of place.
Yeah.
It's our involvement, our winemaking that is supposed to convey that sense of place into the bottle eventually.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. That's our philosophy, and we're sticking to it.
Yeah. I think it's a great philosophy, and it's complete transparency.
Yeah.
And I think it makes total sense. That how dedicated you are to the process, and you're not gonna falsify or fake some shit and be like, okay, you want me to buy a quote unquote winery in Oregon so I can say that it's made there and that I'm doing it there, and like you said, just
then it's like I hire somebody to actually be the lead in winemaking, and are they going to be doing the same thing that we would be doing at our main base of operations? Yeah. That's again one of the benefits I think of being a kind of a small family owned and operated company.
Yeah,
we're able to actually do that.
Yeah.
And in other cases, it's like, nope, you got this massive production facility over here. You got this little high end luxury facility over there, and it's just like managing properties. You're not involved.
You like to have your hands in everything. I think that was awesome.
I do.
We had this joke going around internally too, because here's one of those guys it could be a bucket full of grapes going through cryo or fermentation or manure on the ground or any kind of dirt. You're always just there. You'll just come in and you're like, what do we got here? And it's just in your hands. And I always get a kick when we're doing dirt to bottle experiences or tours and stuff like that. You're just always, come art, am I right? Even wax. We got fucking videos of this dude sticking his hand in waxing himself and stuff. He wants to feel it. He just wants to feel it. You're a salt of the earth.
So I do love being hands on. Well, you were talking about packaging. That's all
and that's
I just do the arts and crafts part of it.
Yeah.
And then Rick brings it to life in a computer.
Yeah, and he's
so
awesome.
that we can actually get it to like the printer, and then he's doing awesome. We should have him as a guest.
We will actually. I think that's a great idea because that goes back to the one team, one dream.
Yeah.
And the people of the team that make it all happen. And then, so what was the idea behind the varietals? So you have like the Pinot Noir that you do outside of there. You have the Rosé and you have the Chardonnay.
Yeah. So we started off with Pinot Noir, right? And then felt really good about that. Wanted to start experimenting with other stuff up there because I really do love that whole coastline of Oregon. It's gorgeous, and it's a ton of fun. I mean, there's so much outdoor stuff to do. I highly recommend it. In particular, I would recommend the Rogue Valley because you got kayaking, river rafting, rock climbing, mountain biking. If you want to go hunting, you can go hunting, fishing, great fishing.
Work hard, play hard.
It is. So like, but as a vacation, you have all of that on the menu, along with a bunch of great wineries and restaurants already up there.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like the undiscovered little jewel of Oregon, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of oddball varietals planted in Southern Oregon. Just like prior to them starting Pinot Noir, they had Syrah, Grenache. They're not oddball varietals, but like ones that don't necessarily fit there perfectly.
That's what I was going to add. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but they also had Merlot and, just kind of like anything but Pinot Noir because they thought, well, Willamette dominates Pinot Noir.
See, that's why I'm glad you're talking about them, man. Poor guys. They're getting it. They're like this redhead stepchild.
That's
Wait,
what it was.
can I say that anymore? Reds.
Nope, cancelable.
No, I'm sorry.
Cancelable.
No disrespect. Hey, I love gingers. People.
No, so it is that's kind of how it was. Now the story that I was told, I don't know if this is true. The story that I was told was that somebody from the whoever was in viticulture or whatever up there and at the University of Oregon, I think.
Yeah.
That they came up with some kind of like sheet of like, Willamette Valley is perfect for Pinot Noir because of these dynamics in the weather.
Yep.
And then here like Umpqua and Rogue Valley are perfect for these. And you look at that data and you're like, well, from a comparative standpoint, yeah, Willamette's cooler, but Rogue Valley is still like cooler than just about everywhere we farm in California, which we make Pinot Noir all throughout the coast of California. So you're like, well, that was misguided just based off of a comparative, in my opinion. And all the marketing was going towards Oregon or Willamette Valley Pinot Noir in particular, which is an absolute fucking racket, this group. And so that's starting to be, adjusted because we helped start another group up there.
You started your own gang.
Well, yeah, just a group of other guys and growers up there that were like, we gotta start standing up for
your rights.
Oregon in general, rather than just focusing on Willamette Valley. Now the shitty part is Willamette Valley still gets all the funding from I'll call it the tax. So we did play with some Syrah and ended up doing a little bit of Rosé out of Pinot Noir and Syrah. Right. And then started looking at Pinot Gris, which I just didn't want to. I don't want to touch that thing. Pinot Gris is a very worthless varietal. Nobody needs it. It doesn't benefit anybody's life. Like there are so many other varietals out there that have character and just they taste better. They tell a better story in your mouth.
You're gonna make a Pinot Gris, I bet.
Fuck no. Fuck no.
You said you weren't gonna make a Sauvignon Blanc.
No.
You said you weren't gonna make a Merlot. You did. Look, ours are giving. I'm calling him out.
Let the shit talking continue.
He talked shit. You were talking shit about Merlot.
I will tell you
sideways, motherfucker.
If I okay, I did make a little bit of Merlot, but that was for the tasting room only.
I know. You gave the people what they wanted.
Well, and we make Merlot to put it in the quilt, the fabric of the land, the red blend. Okay. There's justifiable reasons for this shit.
Sorry, I didn't mean
so anyways, let me get back to this story.
Is this why you don't like me around and you didn't want to invite me to a national sales meeting and all that shit like you said in the past episode?
No, it's good. It sparks more conversation.
Yeah.
No, so started playing with Syrah. The Rosé for the Syrah turned out great. So did the Pinot Rosé. And then the Pinot Gris just didn't turn out because it's Pinot Gris.
Yeah.
And so, we were like, well, what other things can we look at? And there were some little spotty areas of Chardonnay planted down in Rogue Valley predominantly.
Uh-huh.
I was like, let's try our hand at Chardonnay, and started making Chardonnay, and it turned into like one of my favorites that we produce. Higher acidity, really lean, beautiful, like crisp minerality.
One of your favorite Chardonnays
that of all, but of the ones we produce in particular.
Yeah.
It's also the lowest price, which price is not really predicated on what your personal preference is. It's more like what are the costs that go into it, and where do we think this type of product would work.
Go with your palate.
Go with your palate. And so yeah, the Chardonnay turned out to just be stellar.
Yeah.
And these are all getting the same packaging change over to the new package over the next few months. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff. But Elouan's been one of the leaders in Oregon wine. Proud to say that. And I think it's doing nothing but helping spread the love of Oregon wine, which is still a really small category, so to speak. You compare it to California, I mean, the volume differences are like huge. California produces so much more wine than Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, like,
so Oregon is somewhat, it's somewhat kind of insulated, like luxury-wise, which is a good thing. It keeps the perception of the wines more elevated, and as such, people more willing to try something on the higher end, is how I see it. Now, people have their personal preferences. They might not like the style of Oregon Pinots. And so maybe they felt like they wasted their money. But for the people that do love the Oregon Pinots, they have some great opportunities out there to enjoy.
Just really quick on so if someone's like in the store, is there any way that you can kind of say, because you're talking about style, right? So if someone's coming in and you're like an Oregon Pinot compared to a California Pinot, now I know there's like, you have different AVAs, different areas and stuff like that. Is there anything that you can kind of generally think about style-wise to expect from an Oregon Pinot majority, or what from California?
If I were to just say,
that easy? Like,
I would just say in general, Oregon is it is a bit firmer, brighter fruit. So if you think about like fruit, you're thinking, is this more like strawberry raspberry, like bright red fruit, or is this more like plum blueberry, like darker fruit?
Got it.
Right. So I'd say like California Pinot Noir in general has a little more of that darker fruit, where you have more of that high-tone red fruit in Oregon. And then, as such, you have that little bit of, like, that firmness, like almost like this little, like, good acid tannin, kind of what they call tension in the wines. And so if you're looking for something that's a little broader and really soft on the palate, you're probably going to go with California. If you're looking for a little more tension, and it's all, again, personal preference, I'd go to Oregon. On like the spicy tones, I'd say you're a little more of like herbalish. I don't want to say tea. Tea's always a bad thing, but like a sweet herbal sort of medley from Oregon. Yeah. And then you get a little more of like the brown, darker, like cooking sweet spices from California.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
So that was a long way of saying the differences, flavor-wise.
No, I like it though, because that's what people ask. Like, they want to know, like.
Somebody going to sit in an aisle and hear that from like a wine steward and be like, can you just tell me the difference between Oregon and California Pinot? And they're like, take a seat, buddy. I got a story for you.
Just the lawn chair just like busted out. We were talking about Böen, which I think is a brand which is a big nod to the farmer, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to dive into this. I'll let you like take the reins on that. But I think it's great to be, I think it's a great lead in because, dude, you're a farmer, right, bro?
That's right. You may not know this, but
you may not know this about me from my TikTok, but I also
I've always farming is like where the core of my experience started and what I still love to do. I do it way less now than I used to, but that's like the price of success, I guess, is that you bring a team in that helps you do the things that you used to do, and maybe they're the things you loved, maybe some of them are things you didn't love. But nonetheless, as you progress in business and then you have a larger scale business, then you're now managing the business rather than managing these individual pieces that you truly fell in love with. Like, that's one of the things I loved about COVID was I'm not, Wait,
hold on. Can we?
No, what I loved about COVID was that we were essential, right? We, as a farming and wine, or you call it food processing, winemaking company, we were essential. So I had a reason, and our team had a reason to be out in the vineyards, to be in the winery. And guess what?
Yes.
Our fucking offices were shut down.
Yes.
Because of like social distancing. And I loved that because I didn't have to go to the office. And I got to be out in the vineyards and out in the winery all the time. And I was like, dude, this is like fucking 2010 all again. I loved it. It was great. Yeah.
You were even fighting fires on your land.
Yeah, there were a couple fires.
COVID time.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that. Like, I was just like, that was just more of a respect to the farmer. And Art even brought up one of your favorite quotes.
So this is like the core of it. So this is Daniel Webster in 1840. He was a senator, and he used this quote, and we adopted it kind of as the mantra of the brand Böen. Böen means the farm, and it was the first brand we created after we sold Meiomi. And the reason for naming it The Farm was because I wanted to get back to my farming roots. And when you're building a brand that gets that big, you're just constantly putting money back in to grow it for the next year. So I was never able to acquire more land. Like, the land we had is what we had. And I wanted to plant more grapes, farm more grapes, and all that. So the opportunity of selling Meiomi, a big part of that was being able to farm more and be able to sustain our growth more organically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that whole ideology came from. And so this is a quote, though, that I always loved and I felt greatly applies to the wine industry, like the fine wine industry and grape growing all the way through to winemaking. But I don't think Daniel Webster was talking about it in like specifically to the wine business or grape growing. He says, when tillage begins, other arts follow. The farmers, therefore, are the founders of human civilization. Now, let's take it piece by piece. So, when tillage begins, other arts follow. Apply that to anything. So as soon as you start farming something, what does that give you the opportunity to do? Whether it's culinary arts, making wine, like you really don't have art and culture if you don't have agriculture.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there may be a couple anomalies in there, but like really, without tillage of the land, you don't have the opportunity to create culture and art. The farmers, therefore, are the founders of human civilization. So that just summarizes the same thing. Without farming, you don't have the ability to have a civilization. People are going to be scattered about. And there's a longer version of this quote, actually. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because I think it's on here. All right, so I just took part of that quote. This is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to read the whole quote. Let us never forget that the cultivation of the earth is the most important labor of man. Without the cultivation of the earth, he is, in all countries, a savage. I love it.
Savage, dude.
Until he gives up the chase and fixes himself in some place and seeks a living from the earth, he is a roaming barbarian. When tillage begins, other arts follow. The farmers, therefore, are the foundation or founders of human civilization. So, without farming, you are a barbarian. You're a savage. You have no control over your own destiny or the people's destiny around you.
Yeah.
So, farming is a very important part of my life, and that was the beginning of this brand. But when you establish a brand, you don't want to just come up with a name. And so, this all kind of came organically, and that's kind of how we make all of our brands or create them all. And this is something I think it's worth talking about, especially from an entrepreneurship standpoint.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the first example of how kind of the corporate world does it. The way that they typically would do it is they get a think tank or their marketing team together, and they're like, "What's the hot item today?" And then they say like, "All right, we feel like this is going to resonate with a portion of the population. This brand name, this storyline, the colors of the label, etc." And they're like, okay, all signed off, ready to go. Then they say, hey, winemaking. They don't care about the land. They don't care about, the process in winemaking. Hey, winemaking, what wine do you have to fill these bottles so we can get it out to market?
Yeah.
And you're like, where the fuck is the soul in that? There's no soul in that wine. That's just like straight up marketing. And so if you take a step back and think about how the best brands are created, I think, and how they have lasting power. They start off with kind of a goal. You don't know which way that goal is going to go. It's going to ping left and right from time to time, and then you're finally going to get to a point where you're like, I like this product that I'm making, and I feel like I can emulate it or recreate it every time or every year or whatever it may be, and let's create a brand about it. And then you think, what is the storyline of that brand? And then once you have that storyline of like, this was the process how we got here from the tillage of the land all the way through to the final blend of the wine. Now, what is one storyline that encompasses all of that? And then you got to think of one name that encompasses that storyline. And this is the hard part because you don't have a fucking paragraph of a name, right? Like that just never works. So you need something that's going to be very simple and maybe not even meaningful to somebody. But the hope is that once you say it's Böen, once you buy a bottle of Böen, you're like, oh, I really like this. I want to learn more about it. Then you get another layer deeper. Maybe it's down to, okay, it's really about farming roots, and this guy, Joe Wagner, started his career in farming and started making wine. And then you get deeper and deeper and deeper until you finally realize, like, oh, this was a ground-up effort. This is like from the soil all the way through to the marketplace. And once you have that level of discovery, when people are that curious and want to know more, then you have a fan for life. You have somebody who's going to be behind your brands and understand what your ideology is, what your philosophies are, and it creates a real relationship between the customer and the brand and the people behind the brand.
Yeah. And that's how I've seen you do, and that's I've seen you do work with all your brands. And actually, Böen's always been interesting to me because, like you said, it was kind of this, and I don't know if you could stop me actually if we're allowed to talk about that, but you said it was after Mayomi. There's...
So I could, you know what, I'll stop. I'll just jump right into this because there is a lot of detail about this, and it does kind of... So, okay, everybody listening, be on board for this. Just hear me through because it's going to get a little boring for a moment, but maybe just like a minute to 90 seconds, okay? So, because I got to talk about the elements of the Mayomi deal at the same time, right?
That's what I'm saying. People want to hear this stuff, right? They don't usually get this. Okay.
So the biggest issue, the biggest hurdle. So, well, first I'll start off with this company Constellation was pursuing us. It was a couple years of pursuing us, right? They're a large company, publicly traded. They wanted to buy the brand Mayomi. They had seen its growth. They had thought hey, there's a lot more we can do with this. And so I kept saying no, no, no. And then all of a sudden, they were like, well, here's like a multiple is how these deals work. It's a multiple of your EBITDA, which is your earnings before debt and like what amortization, taxes, and what am I missing something? Anyways, EBITDA.
Oh, yeah, actually, you brought up the acronym. EBITDA.
I never remember it. I'm not a corporate guy, so I'm like, whatever.
Really, I don't think we want to remember it. Yeah. I think everyone's still good. Yeah.
So they give you. So they're like, based on the growth, we'll give you a multiple of that EBITDA.
Yeah.
And so we did the calculation real quick, and I'm like, wow, shit, that's a lot of money. Okay, well, what now? Let's actually sit down across the table. So a couple things were like, nope, not selling Bell Gloss, because they were like, we want to buy the whole thing. I'm like, no, this is just one brand Mayomi. That's the only one I'm willing to part ways with, in this deal. So the biggest issue in that deal for them was the non-compete, and a non-compete is basically saying like, we're purchasing this brand from you, and we want to make sure we're not funding our competition. You're the guy that already perfected this style of wine.
Yes. And
it's why we're buying this brand from you. We want to make sure you're not just going to come right back out and compete with us directly.
Did they say that you perfected it?
No. It's fuck you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So and so I was like, well, I'm not going to, we had Elouan from Oregon. So it was like, you have all these carve outs of like, okay, you can keep doing this, keep doing that. You have a price band. So it's like, okay, well, say within this price band of where Mayomi resides, you can't compete within that price band. I was like, I understand that. And they were like, we have to let our shareholders know we're not funding the competition.
Yes.
It's like, okay, cool. I get that. Now it's a time frame. And they were not happy about any of this stuff, really. This it was like very contentious at times. And it was, to the point where I'm like, dude, I don't really need or want to sell this brand. You guys are the ones coming to me.
Dude.
If you guys want this deal, this is how it's going to be. I'm giving you a concession on this. I'm giving you 4 years within this price band for California Pinot Noir. That was kind of it. And they were like, so finally they signed off on it. And so the goal was, now this is where it gets a little more fun because this is where the beginnings of Böen came from. So the first thing was like, all right, I want to create a brand that really does reflect what we're doing in the vineyards and growing the vineyards and focusing on expanding in agriculture. And that's where, Böen eventually came from. But during those earlier years, I knew I couldn't compete directly in that price band of Mayomi. So we created these 3 Pinot Noirs, a Russian River Valley, a Santa Maria Valley, and a Santa Lucia Highlands, all areas we grow grapes, right? And so it's like, all right, we're going appellation specific. We're going to up tier the pricing so it's outside of the price band of what's competing with Mayomi. During that 4-year period, we're going to establish this brand as so people will know it as a quality coastal California Pinot producer. That was the reason for having those 3. In August of 2019, that's when the non-compete came up. And that's when we were staged to release something that would directly compete with Mayomi, which is the tri-appellation or tri-county Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So we launched those, and then shortly after thought, okay, the portfolio, there's not enough focus in what we're doing. We want to focus on these and the lead being the Russian River. And so then it was time to cut loose the Santa Maria Valley and the Santa Lucia Highlands.
Got it.
And use that wine for this tri-county.
Okay.
So that was the whole program, the whole plan of creating a brand in this 4-year period to come out and, now put yourself in a customer's shoes. You're saying, wow, I really like the Böen. It costs $30. The Böen Russian River Valley. Okay, cost me $30. I really like it, and all of a sudden, I see a new wine that's $20 from Böen. I'm going to give it a shot. It's competing directly with Naomi. Then they're like, hey, this is now my everyday wine. Like I can afford this, Monday through Thursday, and then I'll do Belglas on Friday, Saturday, or whatever. Not that people just drink our wines, but you know what I'm saying. Like they just have a comfort level with being able to go to the ones that they know. And so what we did was when we started the process of kind of disbanding the Santa Maria Valley and the Santa Lucia Highlands, and then putting a lot of effort towards Böen and really upgrading, I think, the quality on the Tri-County, it set a really good foundation for the growth of this brand. And so that's it. That's where it all kind of stemmed from.
And I wanted to add too that I mean that's awesome, dude. Thank you. Actually, that was like really concise. So I was also thinking about like Naomi, right? And I've gotten this a lot, and it's not like to be talking shit, but it's just like I think a truth to say that even if it's Naomi, right? And I've heard like people have saying, oh, it tastes different, or like over time and everything, and we've kind of gone over about how even like the revamping of brands and stuff, like you can have a name and everything, but like sometimes you have to ask yourself, is it still the same juice inside? Is it still the same ingredients inside? As we're talking about ingredients, is it still the same thing? I mean, I just heard recently that there was something that went on with Sriracha. Well, ingredients and stuff had to change on Sriracha because there was some collaboration that was going on there in the makings of it with like the peppers that like is no longer there. I think there was a little bit of drama. And so now they had to source from different places. And so like there's been a flavor change, but that's not communicated to the consumer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Why would it be?
Yeah.
It's just like keep selling it. So when people are saying like, oh, Naomi's gonna taste something like sweeter or whatever, with like the juices change and stuff.
So that's where like for me, I had to look at it like, am I going to be able to maintain the level of quality of this product? And we were getting to a point it was getting so big with Naomi that I was like, I can't do that, and I'm not willing to bring it to the next level of like, blowing it up in these other channels that I thought were not fine wine channels as far as where we sell wine. So it was a good time for us, or good timing for us, to be able to sell that brand, but then also focus on like, we don't want to get that big. We don't want we don't want to be the next Naomi. We want to be of scale so that everybody can find it out there, like that it's not like on allocation and like it's like, oh, you're lucky to find this stuff. Like that's one way to run in the wine business, but you also want to have a wine that pulls people into fine wine. So this is kind of the answer to that with Böen. It's like, you try this, say you're drinking a $10 wine or $15 wine on a regular basis, and then you jump up to this $20 price point. You're like, wow, that is twice as good for $5 more. Like just that's kind of the goal. And then it's like, well, if that jump was good, I wonder what happens when I go from 20 to 40 or 20 to 50. And so it gives them confidence in being able to move up that price ladder and experience more luxury wines and really start to understand the true story behind how wines are made and everything. So that's kind of where it all went. And to your point of, do the ingredients change, or does the process change, or does the fruit sourcing change, or whatever? I have no idea. I do know I do know that there has been a discernible difference, and I hear it from the people, people all throughout the land, that it tastes different. We're like, well, I'm not quite sure what they're doing.
You're like, it's not. I don't.
It's like,
you're like, I don't do it. So.
Like, I don't do it, but I have this now. If you want to try this,
I have something that I do know. It's not where it's coming from.
So it's pretty funny to see, but that is a common thing. So back to your Sriracha point, like, okay, big success has another set of hurdles ahead, right? If you're a startup business, you've got a set of hurdles that seem small. You look back on them and they're small. But then if you're Sriracha and you can't supply enough Sriracha hot sauce because you can't possibly process or grow that many peppers in whatever the region is, or if I don't know what the confines are that they need to work within, then they're probably going to start outsourcing. At the end of the day, does the customer know? Probably not. Does the quality of the product change? That depends.
Yeah.
If they're able to maintain the exact same style, then cool. That's good for them, and they're able to grow their market share. But in wine, that's very difficult. And now we've seen Naomi move from Sonoma, Monterey, Santa Barbara down to a California appellation. So obviously they were not able to keep pace with what they needed from just those coastal regions. So now where are the grapes coming from? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's not from those three. Yeah.
And I'm saying, like, as you, as a farmer, and being as hands-on and involved in everything that you do as a creator, that you're able to know, because I thought like a big point of Böen, right, is that you wanted it to represent the land that it's coming from, right?
Exactly.
So you want it to, like, if it's the Russian River single vineyard, you want people to know what they expect from Russian River as AVA, as a land, like, but that's what they're going to be getting.
Yeah.
And you're able to constantly be, not, I want to say, like, you're able to be involved in, like, help control that and making it so, as opposed to, like, really caring about and actually caring, and as opposed to, like, not caring and being like, we're just it's selling, so let's go find some other grapes or something, and if it tastes a little different and people are whatever, it doesn't.
So that's like big liquor business, right? Like, think of like vodka. So it's like, you don't know if Grey Goose might have started off as like a tiny little brand somewhere, and then all of a sudden it started gaining market share. And like, Tito's is a good example. The guy started in his garage. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like he's just producing massive amounts of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's vodka, so it's not like you can fuck it up. It's just, but it's like now it's relying upon the brand more than it is about the quality. Same thing, like you could say Meiomi is relying upon the brand, that it has built a following over the years, and now people are just kind of like running with it. Like that's something like Pabst. We talked about Pabst in the past
when we did the whole like revamping thing, right? Like you don't know who buys beer. What. Sometimes these companies sell, and
so it's good quality beer, and then somebody bought it and was like, you know what, I'm going to take this good name that the American people love, and I'm going to run it into the ground to cut costs and make as much money as possible until the only remnants of this product that are left are the intellectual property, the trademark of it, and then we're just going to stop doing it. And then somebody else eventually picked it up and revamped it, but. That's kind of like, that's one way to operate a business. Not the way I want to, but like, hey, it's America. You can choose which way you want to go.
And again, I think, and that's what's great about Böen too, man, is that like, when people like, when they like see you or they're seeing you represented by the label, and you're out there in the vineyard and you got your shovel or you're out there with something like that, you're farming. Like, I like it. That's like, this is not a show. This is what you do. It's kind of like what's important to you, or like the label and stuff like that. It wasn't something that was constructed in some kind of like laboratory or like some fucking think tank. Like let's make this guy.
And we've also tried to do some fun things with this. So like, rather than like you see, we have our QR code on here, right? Like that's what people are like. People are like, how you trying to understand how people are absorbing information, how they want to get it. We've done a number of things that didn't work, right? And when things don't work, what do? You just stop doing them. But you got to try.
Let's talk about this, because I like this, man, because you're really open about this, and it helps even for the entrepreneurship part of it, of like, keep going on stuff that you've tried with this brand, and sometimes things you find out like either don't work for the time, or they kind of get outdated or whatever or not, and you kind of just have to go back to the drawing board, or you just kind of go along with it. So you said the QR code.
Yeah, so it kind of goes from that, like what we were talking about earlier where you're going from like, you want people to try the wine, get to know the brand, and then go deeper and deeper and deeper. So how do you make that process easier? So we started looking at different technologies that were out there and thought like, all right, well, the like QR code pre-COVID was really not much of a thing. And so we started looking at these NFC.
The technology that was put in the cap where you could kind of tap it.
Yeah, so we were able to put it into our screw cap, and what you would do with your phone was that you would tap it, and then you'd have something pop up, and then that was like an experience in its own way. And that was it's supposed to be a program that would be kind of like a bunch of knowledge that you could ask, right? So we called it Ask Joe. That's kind of what the goal was. Problem was, when we first released it, that technology to read NFTs was not NFCs.
Yeah, sorry.
Jesus, NFCs was not native in a lot of the phones. So we eventually resorted to QR codes, but just like we tried that, we did a whole run of it. I mean, it came at a pretty good cost because it was new technology and whatever else. But we tried it and learned from it and realized like this is not working. So we switched back to something else, and it's still been going on now. Now it's kind of like, well, does this education platform work? I mean, we spent a bunch of time answering questions and creating dialogue, like AI or fake dialogue. I was the one actually answering the questions.
Yeah.
And, if you look at the data, like, we had quite a few people asking it questions, whatever else. But the questions were really like dumb questions. Like, what did you do? First time you opened Siri, you're like, hey, Siri, why are you such a And she's like...
Was that your first question? What? Yeah.
But that's it. So people always want to fuck with anything that is technology, right?
Of course, dude. Yeah,
so,
if you're gonna have
so
fun.
we tried to like inlay funny things in there,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
you know, like Siri just kind of takes the approach of like, I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you please rephrase that?
Yeah.
So like you know, I think we did a pretty good job of this, but again, the adoption rate on this is not what we expected it to be.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that people want to interact with the brand in a different way. So we're going to be cutting the Ask Joe out. If I were to give advice to anybody on like what you do when it comes to new technologies like that, like, yeah, assess them, try them out. That's how they develop over time. But also, you've got to learn how to fail fast. Like that's one thing that I think people, they're always trying to push something they believe in. It's like pushing a rock uphill, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, it's not going to yield anything. And you got to, you know, if you can see that it's going to be harder and harder and harder, then just drop it then. And maybe at some point in the future, you could bring it back up. But right now, the technology is not there. The adoption rate's not there. So get rid of it and change to something else that you think might work. Or just go back to the basics of what you're doing. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So quilt, the story, right? Everyone wants to know. The quilt, the name comes from when you look down at the Napa Valley, right? It looks like this beautiful quilt.
Yes, the patchwork, like
the patchwork.
So Napa Valley is one of those unique areas. We have an ag preserve, which is awesome. So it kind of keeps everything in agriculture, and you have minimum sized parcels in the ag preserve. So it creates this beautiful kind of overview of a patchwork that looks like a quilt. And every part of the valley is, you know, it's got its own different style of beauty. But the philosophy with quilt was to take that patchwork and work with different appellations within Napa Valley to create this cohesive quilt style cab, right? So we saw great success with that right off the bat. We started experimenting with other things. So now we got the Chardonnay, we got the Reserve Cabernet, we've got the Fabric of the Land, which we're enjoying right now. And I haven't had this in a while. I fucking love this wine. Just did the Sauv Blanc, which was our first Sauv Blanc. And then we got, what did I miss? The Chardonnay? Yeah.
No, and
the thread count.
Thread count.
So thread count's gonna be the newest one, and that like, this is our everyday. Like this is the entry level. This thing's like we're going for like a $20, knock your socks off, you know, stellar bottle of red, and we just launched that like 2 months ago, and it's been really well received.
Hell yeah! I mean, like, and so with the, I was gonna say also with the Sauvignon Blanc. So this Fumé Blanc.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, we call it Fumé Blanc. It is technically the same variety, and there's no real regulation about what Fumé Blanc is.
Yeah.
But historically speaking, Fumé Blanc would differentiate itself by being barrel aged and maybe having a little Semillon blended in, and that's what we do. So if you say Fumé Blanc, it could just be a marketing term, but if you want to be true to the history of what Fumé Blanc's intention was, it was kind of a rendition or a different style of Sauvignon Blanc. But it was predominantly just Sauvignon Blanc.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's the difference. So yeah, we do a Fumé Blanc. This is barrel aged. We got a little bit of Semillon in there. It's just light, bright, crisp.
But when you're talking about the marketing term, like you would only use this for the varietal of Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh yeah,
to say Fumé Blanc.
It's actually classified under like as a Sauvignon Blanc alternative.
The part of Quilt, right, is not only with that story, but it's also showcasing that you're pulling. So, for example, if we're talking about the Cabernet, right? The fruit here is coming from different vineyards throughout the Napa Valley.
Yeah,
These
so
different AVAs.
So different AVAs, which are all, like appellations, are formerly called AVAs. So we work with 7 of the AVAs for the quilt in particular. So we're not going like to the outskirts. We're taking kind of the main ones that I think really resemble like the true original Napa Valley Quilt Cab. So you got like the mountain regions of Howell Mountain and Atlas Peak. I prefer the east side hilltops versus the west side hilltops, and that's just a personal preference. So you've got like, you know, Mount Veeder, Spring Mountain on the west side of the valley, and then you got, you know, appellations like Howell Mountain and Atlas Peak, and they're a little brawnier, a little bit like drier, a little dustier, really tannic, and then that needs to be balanced out with like something softer. So then you start looking at areas that are warmer, like Calistoga and St. Helena, which are valley floor and valley like the foot slope of the hills. So well-drained soil is what we always look for, and so those really kind of like soften up these really tight tannins, and so you get these really kind of drab characters that might also not be very pleasant on their own. Like it could be almost out of balance, too drab. And then you work with other areas like Coombsville, which is one of my favorite appellations in a hot year, like fucking awesome wines, but always balanced, great like minerality. Oak Knoll and Rutherford. Like that's kind of where our wheelhouse is and what we're working on. And there's a great map.
Oh,
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you, Art.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we don't generally work with Yountville. We do with a little bit, like for some of the red blend components for Fabric of the Land. So like Merlot. A lot of the soils are a little heavy. Somebody's going to get pissed off. I'm going to say that.
Wait, were they going to get pissed off?
I generally don't really like the soil types in Yountville as much.
Oh, shit. Oh, no.
They can be a little heavier, a little clay. Oak Knoll, there's a lot of areas. And that's not like, I'm not like over, I don't want to like overstate this like this for everything. Like there are great areas in every appellation. Charles Valley gets a little too hot. You can see how Mountain there in Atlas Peak, and then
can this be like for varietal as well? Like when you're talking about like the different areas and soil, like we're talking about Cabernet right now, but like if you're talking about a different varietal that could be actually prosper better.
Yeah, I mean, so if you scroll down just a little bit more, you're going to see Los Carneros right there, right? So like you're going to have a real challenging time if you're going to try and grow Cabernet in Carneros. It's just too cool. It's too close to the bay. It gets too much of a maritime influence. So you're generally going to see like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay thriving down there. A lot of people planted Merlot, and a lot of that's come out because Sideways just fucked Merlot. But I also don't think it was the proper planting. Like if you got Carneros land, like you can make some amazing Pinots and amazing Chardonnays, that's like where we have the Elouan Loch Vineyard, and some of our Chardonnay comes for the quilt comes from that. But yeah, everywhere is different. You look at like Petite Syrah, like the base for the Fabric of the Land. The majority of that Petite Syrah comes from Calistoga, because if you have a hot climate like Calistoga and a really big varietal with a lot of tannin, like Petite Syrah has a shit ton of tannin, then you're going to be able to kind of pull that tannin down a little bit by rounding off with an overripe style of Petite Syrah. And then we work with other blenders to bring it into balance. So yeah, that's my quick summary of the appellations of Napa Valley, and it's a special place, man, and I love it here.
I was gonna say that.
So go ahead.
Well, so you mentioned Merlot, and I think this is important thing to mention is that. So do you like Merlot?
I do like Merlot.
You do like Merlot.
I especially like it as a blender, but I've had there's some amazing standalones also, like
which you're going to be having a standalone through Quilt, aren't you not?
We're doing like a little bit. So like, and that's not going to be like every year.
Yeah.
But it's something that if we can do in the tasting room and that sort of thing, then yeah, we'll do it. But like, when there's like an exemplary wine that we want to showcase, we'll definitely take part of that and bottle it on its own, and then the rest will be blended into like in that case, the rest will be blended into the Fabric of the Land.
Right.
So, but yeah, there's some great Merlots. The only real varietal I think that just doesn't do well anywhere is Pinot Gris. I mean, that's
back to the Pinot Gris. Could you ever? Because I've also seen that you have your favorites. And another point I was going to try to make is I know there's some wines that you probably don't care for that much, or I should even say like styles. Like when we go like with Taylor Lane, you did it in a Burgundian style.
Yeah.
And
well, I don't like using that term. It's better than Burgundy. It's as simple as that.
See how you're already good, but you don't like.
That's another fucking.
But you don't
somber.
like. Okay, but would you?
It's done in a Burgundian style. I think you're going to love it.
Hold on a second.
Like, Jesus Christ.
Hold on a second though. Isn't that on the site though? Doesn't it say that on the Belglass site when it's talking about
I will say it's more
Burgundian
traditional.
style?
I didn't write that fucking copy.
Mark, bring it up. Wait, is it on there?
Dude, if it's on there, I'm calling the marketing team after this. I will call them.
I might be wrong.
I will call them right now.
If I'm wrong, but
okay, so it's more traditional style.
Okay, whatever. The more traditional style, which you even said that it wasn't something that you really like, right? That style, but you made it because other people like it.
No, I made it because that's what the vineyard told me to do. I don't mean like the vines weren't like, hey, Joe, I got an idea. It was like we were battling that vineyard all the time to get ripe. And like, so think of it this way, okay? You've got like 3 vineyard designates under Belglass. And they all got the red wax. They all say Belglass Pinot Noir. And then in little writing on the bottom, there's a vineyard designate.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like, we realized a lot of people don't even pay attention to that. They're just like, oh, it's Belle Glace. I like that wine. I'm going to buy it. And so they were buying, like, Clark and Telephone, or they were buying Las Alturas, and those were really rich, opulent styles. And then they would buy Taylor Lane, and it would be like, yeah, this isn't the wine that I had. And it's like, well, no, it's a different vineyard, and it's a very different style. So we were like, we gotta change this. Like, the vineyard isn't able to produce that, like, immense, rich style of Pinot Noir that Belle Glace has, more consistently been known for. And so we kind of just listened to the vineyard and said, like, all right, we'll push this to the limit. We'll still extract what Mother Nature gave us to its fullest extent and see what happens, and then just adapt and evolve our processes to match what we think would be best for that wine. And that just is a process you do just by being involved every step of the way, tasting and figuring out, like, experimenting. And so it evolved into this totally different style that needed, more time. I mean, we're talking like 2 to 3 years in barrel. Like, our Belle Glace Pinots, like the big rich ones, although it sounds counterintuitive, those only need like 9 to 12 months in barrel. And then you have Taylor Lane being arguably like the lightest Pinot Noir we produce, thriving with like 2 to 3 years of barrel aging.
Yeah.
You're like, this doesn't make any sense. Well, it's a very, like, angular wine in its youth, so it benefits from, having a little more time to have those elements soften out. And then further, we only bottle it in Magnum so that we can age it before we release it. So, like, we released our first vintage with this philosophy in Magnum only was 2011. We released that like 2 years ago or something. And then we went through, like, 6 months ago. We ran out of stock, sold through all that. And then about 6 months ago, we went through and we were tasting through, like, the next 5 vintages. So it was actually 11 all the way through to 16. And we're like, they're all in bottle. We're like, all right, let's see which one is tasting best. And oddly, it was the 2014 that was tasting the best. So we released the 2014, and we're allowing the 12 and the 13 to sit a little more time in bottle. Like, there's no rules to it. It's just like what tastes best at that moment, what's ready to go. And if nothing's ready to go, we just don't release anything.
And I like what you said about you did it because the vineyard told you to.
And
that's very, like, farmer spiritual.
I don't mean to get, like, all that spiritual on it. But, like,
you're there with your cowboy hat. You're just like, kind of like meditating in the vineyard.
I'm in,
like,
Aries.
I'm
in Aries.
You are Aries. We already talked about astrological signs.
What I do love about the quilt and what it's like really allowed us to do is, like, I mean, this is all of our old stomping ground, all in Napa Valley.
Yeah.
Right? But,
yeah.
Okay, Art pulled it up.
No! There it is. Hold on. If you were listening, Taylor Lane. Hold on. We're back here. The key. Oh, my God.
Well, first of all, that's got my
similarity
signature.
To Burgundy and
Burgundian winemaker.
Yeah. We consulted.
Oh no. Okay, so no, hold up. So this is part of the story, and that is true. He's a Burgundian winemaker that did come out.
Burgundian winemaker to apply some of their traditional old world techniques to make Taylor Lane a traditionally steeped,
yet California coastal Pinot Noir coming out of the true Sonoma coast. Okay, I don't see anything else about Burgundy. The key was the similarity of Burgundy. Okay, it's not a Burgundian style. I didn't say that, but Jesus Christ, you guys are really.
Wait.
I'm feeling personally attacked right now, and I'm gonna go through and change all this shit.
Yeah, well, dude, come on, though.
Do you want me to give you his phone number, or do you still have his speed dial?
Whose phone number?
It says.
Well, who's the head of marketing?
Oh, Barry. No, but that is true. So there are similarities.
To
heat
Burgundy.
Summation, and then we did bring in a dude from Burgundy. He just happened to be from Burgundy, but he's a really good winemaker from Burgundy. And so we were like, and he was like hung out for us for like a week, and we ran around. And he had some fucking crazy ideas, dude. I was like, he was.
Yeah.
He used to be a monk. Like he lived at a monastery. And then decided to get out of monkism or monkhood or whatever they call it.
Monkism.
And then he started making wine. He still wears his fucking monk shoes every day, like rain or shine, like these like little like sandal slippers, like something like Jesus would wear. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, thank you, Art, for the clarification. I now feel better about myself that I didn't write. It is a Burgundian style wine, which was the point.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, we are all over the board today.
We are all over the board.
Wait,
Wait, what? Now we got a picture of Ron
Burgundy.
Burgundy. That's Burgundian. Is that what you meant? It's like it's a Ron Burgundy style.
It's Ron
That's what
Burgundy.
you should do.
It smells like leather-bound books and.